Hi, everybody. It's Harvard Lawyer Lee. Well, it's a question I get all the time in the comments. Comes in different forms. It might be, what could Amber Heard possibly have been thinking that would make her fill in the blank? Or why would Amber think that would work? Or what would make Amber continue to do that when it isn't working? I get that question or some form of it all the time. Today, I want to talk about the answer to that question. I want to specifically look at the evidence that came from Dr. Shannon Curry, Johnny Depp's expert witness, who is a forensic psychologist. And I want to talk about the way her testimony unveils what Amber Heard would do or might be thinking. She tested Amber Heard for 12 hours and interviewed her during that time. She concluded that Amber Heard had two significant personality disorders. And I want to unpack what that personality disorder would mean in terms of the evidence at trial. Do they match? Do they dovetail? And if so, what might Amber Heard have been thinking when she did each of these things? Then there's a second video that will be coming to you pretty soon, hopefully next week. We are going to be doing an interview of Dr. Soham Das, a UK forensic psychiatrist, and it's going to be absolutely fascinating. We are going to be asking him some of the questions I have, you have, about what are the things Amber Heard might be thinking. What do these personality disorders mean? Tell us more. So if you would do two things for me, please. Go down to the comments. If you have a question that you want me to ask Dr. Das, put it in the comments. I'm going to ask as many of your questions as I can possibly cram into the interview. And then the second thing is be sure to subscribe because you do not want to miss the interview with Dr. Das, which will probably be coming next week. He has COVID. We're hoping he gets better, sending out well wishes to him, and really looking forward to the interview. So today I want to cover three things. First of all, I want to talk about why there was an examination and testimony about a psychiatric evaluation of Amber Heard, but there was not one of Johnny Depp. There's a reason for that, and I want to discuss it. The second thing I want to talk about is what exactly Dr. Curry diagnosed Amber Heard with. What are those personality disorders? And then the third thing, we're going to look at the actual video of Dr. Curry testifying, and then we're going to talk about how what she says might fit with the evidence that we saw at trial. For our first topic, Shannon Curry diagnosed Amber Heard after 12 solid hours of interviewing and testing her. There was not similar testing or interviewing of Johnny Depp. Why is that? Well, the difference came with what their claims were. Initially, Amber Heard asked for a psychiatric evaluation of Johnny Depp, and the court ruled, no, you don't get one. The reason was that Johnny Depp's damages and his claims all centered around what he had lost financially. He had lost movies, he had lost advertising deals, he had lost things that could be measured financially. That meant Amber Heard got certain discovery, like a deposition of a Disney executive, or like a deposition of an agent who represented Johnny Depp. But it didn't really have anything to do with Johnny Depp psychiatrically. On the other hand, Amber Heard filed a statement from her expert witness, Dr. Hughes, and in that claim, she had post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Now, the reason that she made that claim was probably that she didn't have a lot of financial damages. After all, Amber Heard's career was doing better. She had big movies. She was starting to move ahead in her career. So she didn't really have a lot of financial things she could point to as damages. So instead, Amber Heard pointed to her supposed PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and said that was her damages. Well, when she made that claim, Johnny Depp's team came in and said, look, then that means we get to interview and talk about what her psychiatric issues are for two reasons. First, we get to evaluate whether she even has PTSD. And then secondly, we also get to determine whether whatever symptoms she has might have come from something other than PTSD from being in an abusive relationship. So that's what we are going to be looking for in our exam. And the court said you're right and allowed that examination of Amber Heard. That's why you saw a difference in what the testimony was about for each of them. Now, there was an attempt to do an end run around that Amber Heard's attorneys put up Dr. Spiegel, who tried to kind of move around that rule. We'll do a separate evaluation of his testimony, and I'll show you when that happened. But there was nothing to back it up. There wasn't the testing and the interviews that had taken place as Dr. Curry did with Amber Heard. So let's talk about what exactly Dr. Curry diagnosed Amber Heard with. There were two things. The first was borderline personality disorder, and the second was histrionic personality disorder. Now let's listen to the testimony of Dr. Curry, and then as she testifies, we're going to stop it and talk about, okay, what did the evidence say that would fit or not fit with this?
That instability is really driven by this underlying terror of abandonment. So one of the key features also of this disorder, I mean, all of it is like pistons of an engine kind of firing off and igniting one another. But when somebody is afraid of being abandoned by their partner or by anybody else in their environment and they have this disorder, they'll make desperate attempts to prevent that from happening.
As soon as I heard that testimony about borderline personality disorder and the fear of abandonment, the first thing I thought about was the text messages that Amber Heard sent to Johnny Depp when he had left one time following an argument. Camille Vasquez read through those, and it was Amber Heard, without response from Johnny Depp, texting over and over, "Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? You're a monster for leaving me." And it's almost stalkerish where she just asks over and over again. And it really does show that real intense fear of being abandoned, of him leaving her. I talked about this in the monster video. I'll link it at the end.
And those desperate attempts could be physical aggression, it could be threatening, it could be harming themselves. But these are behaviors that are usually very extreme and very concerning to the people around them.
When I heard that testimony, one of the things I thought about was Johnny Depp's testimony about the big Australia fight and how he kept moving from room to room, trying to lock the door and get away from her. And she would follow him and try to get in the door and try to pull him back into the fight.
The anger is typically what, sadly, it's counteractive, right? So the thing these people fear most is being abandoned. But over time, the anger, the explosive anger that they show when somebody is needing space, or when somebody's really not doing anything wrong, because a lot of times they read into things that they perceive as being a slight to them or being somebody intending to harm them that actually isn't happening. They'll exaggerate it.
That particular testimony I thought was really important because it cast doubt on what Amber Heard talked about, because when she talked about things that she thought that Johnny Depp did that were wrong to her, there was often contradiction to that. One of the things I thought about was her testimony that related to that night in the trailer park where they had gone just for a fun time. And she testified about how Johnny Depp attacked her and destroyed the inside of that trailer, and how angry the people who owned the trailer park were that Johnny Depp had destroyed the inside of that trailer. And then Johnny Depp's team put on the owner of the trailer park, the person who managed it and was actually there that day. And he said that there was this minor damage of virtually inconsequential value in terms of finances, and that Johnny Depp quickly fixed it. And it didn't seem to match at all with what Amber Heard had described.
And they'll explode, they'll react in this heightened manner that is just exhausting for their partners. Oftentimes their partners will try to make them happy at first and really allow themselves to be a punching bag, thinking that they can somehow solve this problem, that somehow they can make this better. And eventually it just overwhelms them.
Without question, this is how Johnny Depp's testimony came out, that he eventually became overwhelmed by the difficulty of dealing with such an intense emotional relationship with Amber Heard and with the intense fighting that was going on.
And that reactivity is when you're going to see a lot of this escalation in the bizarre behavior. They can react violently. They can react aggressively. They will often physically prevent their partner from trying to leave if their partner wants to get space from all of this intense emotion. And oftentimes they will be abusive to their partners in these situations. Sometimes they'll physically restrain them from leaving and become injured that way. But also, people with borderline personality disorder, it seems to be a predictive factor for women who implement violence against their partner. And one of the most common tactics that they'll use is actually physically assaulting and then getting harmed themselves, but mostly we call this administrative violence. So essentially this is saying that they'll make threats using the legal system. So they might say that they are going to file a restraining order or claim abuse, or they might do these things to essentially try to keep their partner from leaving. In the moment,
this particular testimony by Dr. Curry was pretty pointed because of the fact that Amber Heard, in fact, filed for divorce and specifically sought a restraining order against Johnny Depp, claiming she had been abused. And now Dr. Curry is going to describe the other personality disorder she diagnosed Amber Heard with. It wasn't just borderline personality disorder, it was also histrionic personality disorder.
Two sides of the same coin. They're very similar. Whereas I was saying that borderline personality disorder, a lot of the key features that you're going to notice are instability. When it comes to histrionic, a lot of the key features are going to be drama and shallowness. Similarly, with borderline personality disorder, there's this underlying drive of avoiding abandonment. With histrionic personality disorder, that underlying drive is to always be the center of attention. Because if you don't have that attention on you, it feels similarly to borderline personality disorder. You feel pretty empty, like you don't have that sense of being or of value.
Dr. Curry is describing histrionic personality disorder as a need to be at the center of attention. So as she goes through this, let's talk about the evidence and whether or not that fits with what Amber Heard was diagnosed with as histrionic personality disorder.
So whereas borderline personality disorder might have more of the visible reactivity if somebody seems to be leaving, with histrionic personality disorder, what you're going to see is extreme discomfort with not being the center of attention, extreme efforts to be the center of attention. And when they feel that they're not the center of attention, you will see some strange things, making up stories to try to get attention, often taking on a victim or princess role. That's when they might take the victim role or the princess role and even make up stories. Sometimes those stories are to bolster the victim role. Sometimes those stories are just to make them look more interesting or accomplished in their mind so that they can get respect and attention that way.
That particular personality disorder diagnosis, the histrionic one, really fits with much of Johnny Depp's theme throughout the case, that Amber Heard insisted on being a victim, even in, for example, the op-ed that she wrote in the Washington Post, the one that was the very center of the entire case. She portrayed herself as a victim. One of the most important ones that Camille Vasquez hit hard at in the cross-examination was the story that Johnny Depp had raped her with a bottle. That story had never appeared before in public anywhere. No other person outside testified that that had ever been said until Johnny Depp sued her and said, there's no support for the title of the op-ed, which says that you were a victim of sexual violence. Only when he made that statement, that's unsupported, did she then come up with the story. And Camille Vasquez and Depp's team said, you made up that story to support something that you couldn't prove in the lawsuit where you were about to lose.
Is there a relation between histrionic personality disorder and attractiveness?
There is, strangely, and this is always one of the trickiest things to talk about because how is that a symptom? But characteristically, people with this disorder are very, very interested in looks, but more importantly, they utilize their looks to get that attention, to get that respect that they're seeking.
This particular testimony is really interesting because Dr. Curry is saying that Amber's beauty, her good looks, would be something she could use as part of her need to get attention and to be the center of attention.
Does the intelligence of the affected person bear on the manner in which these disorders present?
Yes, and I think one way to think about it that's probably a little more accurate than just intelligence is In psychology, we would describe this more as sophistication. So street smart, so to speak. So that sophisticated version, they can be a little bit more calculated in the way they present. They tend to kind of hit you where it hurts a little bit more. And they can be actually very, very destructive.
This testimony was particularly interesting to me because I remembered the testimony by the marriage counselor who talked about Amber Heard was so overwhelming with her verbal attacks on him, and that was not his style. I mean, he was not somebody who was going to fight back verbally like she was.
You mentioned that one of the characteristics of borderline personality disorder is emotional reactivity. How might that present in an intimate relationship?
So I think it probably presents mostly, or you'd see the bulk of it in intimate relationships because of that regular interaction and the desire for your partner to meet all of your needs, to be the perfect caretaker. Also that the hallmark of the disorder with the splitting, so idealizing, devaluing, and the perceiving of all sorts of neutral events as somehow demeaning or disrespectful.
Dr. Curry is again talking about Amber Heard or anyone with this particular personality disorder potentially perceiving events that really were intended to be neutral, that were not aimed at her, as intensely disrespectful, as demeaning. One of the things I thought about was Amber's intense anger when Johnny Depp was late to her 30th birthday party. He had apparently been in a difficult financial meeting where he had understood that his accountant may have stolen money from him. At that point, he came home and she was already very angry with him because he was late to the birthday party. That may not have been intended to be any sign of disrespect for her. It may simply have been an unfortunate event that the two things happened at the same time. Anyone would be probably upset that the person was late to their birthday party, but Amber Heard perceived that event as intensely disrespectful and demeaning, and it became really the ending point of their relationship.
It's regular escalations of anger, frustrated complaints, criticisms of your partner. But because the person with borderline personality disorder, first of all, they're more sensitive to things, they feel distress more strongly, and then that distress lasts longer. So these types of blow-ups go on forever, and they're very cyclic. It feels like you just can't get a resolution, and eventually the partner will try to leave, will want to leave to take a break. It wears them down, and that's when the borderline might explode and act very aggressively or violently to try to prevent them from leaving.
With this testimony, one of the pieces of evidence I thought about was the turd in the bed, because it seemed so bizarre and inexplicable, even in the context of the terrible relationship that they had. But here was an abandonment where Johnny Depp left, where he committed this egregious crime of being late to her 30th birthday, and then left. This could have been an explosion of anger where she acted aggressively to show him how angry she was with him. That's obviously what Johnny Depp thought was the case.
And the traits with the 3-6 code type tend to be marked by a lot of externalization of blame, a lot of denial about one's own personal faults, intentional or not intentional, but just extreme denial, hostility that is strongly controlled and suppressed.
Throughout the testimony and throughout the trial, we saw situations where Amber Heard blamed others and externalized the responsibility for problems. Certainly one of the things I thought about was the issue about Johnny Depp and the severed finger during the Australia fight. Johnny Depp says she severed the tip of his finger when she threw a vodka bottle at him. Amber denies that.
The person may not even realize how hostile they are, but family members, those closest to them, are very likely to report that they lose their temper, and when they lose their temper, it explodes. That 3-6 profile specifically tends to be associated with cruel and ruthless behavior, particularly to those who they perceive as less powerful than them.
When I heard that from Dr. Curry, I thought about Kate James's testimony of the way Amber Heard treated her sister Whitney, and that Amber Heard treated her sister Whitney very disrespectfully and as if she were unimportant.
I looked at the scores that are typical of women with IPV. Hers were not consistent at all with those. I looked at the scores that were consistent with people who are frequently in litigation. Hers actually were very highly correlated with those.
That was a particularly interesting testimony because Dr. Curry is saying that in her testing, Amber Heard's scores didn't match what you would expect from someone who actually was a victim of intimate partner violence, but did match somebody who frequently used the justice system and was involved in litigation.
The reason for that is believed to be that they tend to perceive themselves often as victims who need to avenge wrongs.
I thought that last point was especially telling because Dr. Curry is saying that someone with these personality disorders might need to avenge wrongs against them, and that Amber Heard's need to say, write the op-ed, might come from her turnaround from perceiving Johnny Depp as someone she idolized and loved to someone she completely hated and needing to exact that vengeance against him. And that could have been the motivation behind the op-ed. Dr. Curry's testimony really unpacked some of the thoughts that might have been behind what Amber Heard did. Be sure to subscribe because you don't want to miss next week's interview with Dr. Soham Das when we talk about, from a forensic psychiatrist's point of view, what exactly was going on in Amber's mind. What might she have been thinking? Be sure to put your questions below and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.